Hello, MBA 510 students. This is Professor Hazara, and this is the, let's call it the foundation video. There may be more, but this really is the foundation video for Chapter 3, Cost, Volume, Profit Analysis. That's what it's usually called. In this chapter, there are some very basic concepts and a simple model, but they're very powerful. And even though the concepts are simple, they've lasted the test. They've lasted the test of time. Businesses still use these concepts to budget, to plan their profit, and to see where they can cut costs, maybe some fixed costs, maybe some variable costs, in order to make themselves more profitable, efficient, that sort of thing. Okay, and so I'm going to have a short PowerPoint here, and then I'm going to go over to the Excel spreadsheet. And these are going to be two videos. In the first video, I'm just going to introduce the concepts and give you the formulas and fill in some formulas. And then in the second video, I'm actually going to show you how to do a cost, volume, profit graph on Excel. Okay, so let's start the slideshow. Okay, so this is cost, volume, profit. Okay, it's module 3, I believe. Okay. Cost, volume, profit is a simple, powerful tool used by virtually all businesses. That should say businesses. Let me correct this as I go along, because this is a beta version of this video. Okay, I'll get it right. Okay, so anyway, so it is cost, volume, profit is a powerful tool to measure their profitability and efficiency, and that's exactly what it is. If you have a lot of overhead, a lot of, let's say, dead weight, people sitting in an office doing nothing, yeah, it's best to cut them out to make yourself more profitable. Now, that sounds cold, I know. But unfortunately, that's the way the world works, and that's what happened. It's what's happening now in a lot of companies, is they're looking at where they can cut their costs. And sometimes they do it by cutting fixed costs, which would be overhead, which would be stuff like accounting departments. It doesn't matter how many units you break, your accounting department is relatively fixed. It doesn't matter how many units you make, not break, and sell, your accounting department is a fixed cost, and over a relevant range. And maybe you can put in some automation into your accounting department and make it more efficient and break even at a lower point. The central question in CVP is, what is a business's break-even point? And that's really crucial, because think about it. Break-even means that you make zero money. That's the break-even point. You make your revenues are equal to expenses. But once you make one more unit past the break-even point, you're actually making a profit. If you sell and produce less than the break-even point, you have a loss. Okay, now there's two general definitions of the break-even point. And the first one is the one that's actually going to be the one that's going to be most important to us, because it is the one which really management uses to conceive and depict and imagine what their cost structure should be. And that's when a company has covered all its fixed costs. So if you separate all your costs between fixed and variable, once you've sold enough units, given a certain sales price, given a certain demand, given all of those factors, once you sell enough units to cover your fixed costs, that's your break-even point. When your fixed costs are covered, that's your break-even point. Once you start selling beyond your fixed costs, then you have a profit. But if you don't cover your fixed costs, you have a loss. So conceptually, you'll see this in the graph in the second video. Given a certain set of sales price per unit, variable cost per unit, and total fixed costs, and demand, of course, and number of units sold, which is demand, before covering your fixed costs, you lose money. Once you get to your fixed costs, you break even. And then once you exceed fixed costs, then you actually start making money. We'll look at the formulas in a couple of minutes here. Okay, but there's two general definitions. The first one is when a company has covered all its fixed costs, and two, when a company's net income is equal to zero. Now, the first one is sort of a management perspective. The second one is an accounting perspective. Every accountant should know that when your revenues are equal to your expenses, you have a net income of zero. That's called break even. Of course, if your revenues exceed your expenses, you have net income. If they're less than your expenses, you have then you have a loss. Okay, let's go over to an Excel worksheet here. And in this Excel worksheet, let's see what we got here. Okay, here it is. Okay, and here you'll see that I have in this worksheet, workbook, 3 worksheets. Okay, we're going to go over some basic definitions here. Then I'm going to operationalize those definitions, and we're going to actually give you an example and compute some the break-even point, and even what we call target net income, which is selling beyond the break-even point. And those will be that's where I'm going to finish this first video. In the second video, I'm going to actually erase this before I do the second video. But we're actually going to make a graph. We're going to take the data from this example here, just carry it over here, and we're going to make a break-even graph here. And then once you do that, you can actually start playing around with imagining where you want to be. What level of fixed cost do you want? What do you want your variable cost per unit to be? So anyway, let's start with the basic definitions. Okay, definition one is sales. Obviously, sales are the amount of dollars received for selling products. That's kind of obvious. But we're going to be using a formula which is very, very simple. I'm going to say total sales, and we're going to use the variable TS to describe total sales, is equal to your sales price per unit times the number of units sold. Now, there's obviously nothing magical about this formula, but I want you to get this thing working here. Wait 1 second. Good. I want you to, I'm going to go ahead and make this part bold here. Sorry for my Excel exploding there. Okay, so anyway, so that's the formula we're going to use. Total sales is equal to sales price per unit times the number of units sold. Now, I want you to look at this formula, as simple as it is, but this formula starts at 0. If you sell 0 units, then your revenue is 0. If you sell 1 unit, then you're going to have 1 unit of sales price, 2 units, 2 units of sales price. But the main point I'm trying to make is that this line will intersect any graph at 0. You sell 0 units, you have 0 revenue. Okay, the next one here is variable costs. Okay, variable costs, which you should read in the chapters, are direct costs tied to products which change as sales and production change. Okay, we're going to kind of, in these examples, tie sales and production together. Okay, and so we're going to kind of assume that sales equals production, which is basically a static inventory, but we'll just make that assumption for now. That's sort of an implicit assumption also. And the formula that we're going to use is this one right here. Total variable costs are variable cost per unit. So I'm going to use the acronym TVC to mean total variable costs, okay, and just VC to mean variable cost per unit times the number of units sold. Okay, and variable costs are generally, as I said, I think in a previous video, they are direct costs that usually go directly into a unit. Let's say raw materials that go into a unit sold, like the wood in a baseball bat, or the titanium in a baseball bat. I love baseball bats. And then variable costs, if you multiply them times the number of units sold, then you will get your total variable costs. Okay, and of course, let's say wood in a baseball bat. If you use enough to make 1 baseball bat, then your variable cost will be equal to the variable cost in 1 unit of production, 1 baseball bat. But if you use 2, make 2 baseball bats, then you'll need enough variable cost for 2 baseball bats. So they go up and down as the number of units you sell and produce goes up and down. Okay, now this next term is going to be incredibly important, and it's so important I wrote it twice. Contribution margin. Okay, and contribution margin basically is sales minus variable costs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to debold this, make it less, and I'm going to put these words. That is contribution margin. Sales minus your variable costs. And the rest of the definition should be pretty good. It measures the extent to which sales of products contribute toward meeting fixed costs and at the break-even point, and then contribute to profit after the break-even point. So the constitutive contribution margin, think of the words, contribution margin. You're contributing. So as you sell products, you get the sales price, but you got to take out the variable cost. That difference, each time a product is sold, that difference first contributes toward meeting fixed costs, and then toward fixed costs up to the break-even point, and then it contributes to profit after the break-even point. And we're actually going to graph this in the second video. Okay, then finally, two final terms, total fixed cost. Okay, total fixed cost is just a flat number. That's what we're going to deal with. It is we're going to deal with it as a flat number, and it doesn't matter if you produce 0 units or 1,000 units. Your fixed costs are going to stay the same. So if you have rent on a factory, that stays the same no matter how many units you produce. Same goes through for insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Depreciation also is a fixed cost, by the way. Okay, and then finally, this one's not going to be as important for now, but it is kind of important for decision-making purposes. Target net income. Now, obviously, companies aren't just interested in getting to the break-even point. Companies also want to get beyond the break-even point and target a net income. So they may want to say, given a certain level of sales price, demand, variable cost per unit, and fixed costs, how many units or sales dollars do we have to produce in order to meet a desired net income? We call it target net income. It's the same thing as a target net income, as a desired net income. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our example of that we're going to do. Okay, and okay, so let's use an example, and let's just put some numbers here and see what we get. Okay, this is what we call a contribution approach income statement. It's different than the income statement that you learned in financial accounting. In financial accounting, you had sales minus cost of goods sold is equal to gross profit. Here, we're not looking at all the costs that go into a product, only the variable costs, because we're trying to compute the contribution margin and see how much each product contributes toward meeting fixed costs. Now, in financial accounting and in computing cost of goods sold, we don't care whether it's fixed or variable. Some of it we have to allocate, but we don't care whether it's fixed or variable. We're more interested in reporting to shareholders the total cost of a product that you sell out the door. Here, more interested in seeing how many products you have to sell in order to break even and then make money after that. Okay, let's put into our example. Let's see what we can put into our example here. Okay, so let's say your sales price, SP, by the way, your sales price per unit is $50, let's say. Okay, and let's go ahead and just assume that the number of units you're going to produce is 2,000 units. So here we go, 2,000 units. That's your X. And by the way, the sales price per unit is the variable SP. I'll just put SP out here. That SP is the sales price per unit, not your total sales. Okay, then let's say that your variable costs per unit are $30. So we're going to take away $30 for each unit sold here. Okay, and so there's your variable cost per unit. Okay, and that's VC, obviously. Okay, and then now your contribution margin per unit. Now, all I said, remember I said this, contribution margin is sales minus your variable costs. Now, you can compute that either on a per unit basis or on a total basis. We'll do a total basis in a second. Let's just go ahead and see what our contribution margin is for this example. Okay, so our contribution margin per unit is $20. And what that means is that for every unit you sell, that unit will contribute $20 first to meeting fixed costs up to the break-even point. And after the break-even point, then that unit will give you $20 of profit. So up to the break-even point, the number of units you sell meets fixed costs. Once you get past the break-even point, you cover your fixed costs, and every unit you sell produces profit. Okay, now let's get our total sales and total variable costs. So our total sales here is going to be $50 times 2,000 units, or 100,000. Our total fixed costs are going to be $30 times 2,000, or minus 60,000 of your variable costs. And then now you can compute the contribution margin. I'm just going to go ahead and add these things up. 100 minus 60 gives you 40,000. So your total contribution margin is $40,000. I want you to be aware that I could have also computed my total contribution margin by taking 20 times 40, get 20,000 times 2,000, getting 4,000 that way. So what I'm going to do is just make it 40,000 there. Okay, now you can also do this. Let's get our fixed costs finally here. Fixed costs, let's assume our fixed costs are $25,000. Okay, so your net income is equal to 40 plus a negative 25, or $15,000. Now, what this is saying is that what you've got to do is sell enough units with a $20 contribution margin to cover those $15,000 in fixed costs, and then that will be the number of, that will be your break-even point. Once you've covered your fixed costs and sell one more unit, or two more units, or three more units, then you actually start making profit. But if you don't sell enough units to cover your fixed costs, then you have a loss. Okay, now you can compute this also in percentage terms, and everything is computed as a percentage of sales dollars. Okay, so 100,000 divided by 100,000 is 1, so that's 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in percentage terms there. Okay, then, but I have to do it again. Maybe I'll do that. Nope. Got the repeat key. So this again. Okay, so percentage, 100%. I'll do it a couple more times. That's okay. Okay. Now, of your sales are 100%. Of your sales, your variable costs are 60% of those sales in a negative sense, because they are a cost against those sales. Okay, and now if you take your sales and subtract out your fixed costs, that gives you 40%, which is 40% of sales. And you can see that your contribution margin is 40%, which is 40,000 divided by 100,000 basically. But that's going to be an important number, a nice important shortcut for us when we have to compute the break-even point in dollars, let's say. Okay, so let's go down here, and you're going to see 4 formulas here. Okay, and the 4 formulas are the formulas that you use. And it's basically one formula, and we just modify it slightly. Okay, and those 4 formulas are going to compute the break-even point in units and dollars, and we're also going to compute target net income. See a little thing I've changed. Okay, now this is the most important formula of all. Okay, and what this is going to be your break-even point in units, and this is what it is going to tell you. And you can see what I've already written in the description here. So let's go ahead and do it, and then I'll go over description. But what it is total fixed costs divided by sales price minus variable costs per unit. Okay, and this really is, I'm going to write in here, this is your contribution margin per unit. Okay. And just to be specific about that, what I'm saying is that the denominator is your contribution margin per unit. Okay, so what this is going to give you is it's going to give you the break-even point units, which is the number of units you have to sell in order to cover your fixed costs. Okay, so total fixed costs in this example, and I'm going to put a negative here. We don't want negative numbers in here. So I'm going to do equal to 25,000, equal to a negative 25,000. Okay, so there's your fixed costs. Okay, our sales price per unit is $50. Minus our variable price per unit. It's going to be minus, it's going to be actually a plus because it is a minus. It's already a minus, so we'll just do it like that. Okay, it's already a minus, so it's going to give you $20. So what this is saying is you've got to cover your total fixed cost break even. Each unit contributes $20 toward that fixed cost. So if you divide your $25,000 total fixed cost by your contribution margin per unit, which is $20 toward meeting those fixed costs, that'll give you the number of units you need to sell, produce and sell in order to meet fixed costs. Let's see how many units that is. You can already see the description I have. 1,250 units. That's units, okay? And looking over here, this means that the company must sell 1,250 units to break even. I have a net income of 0, okay? And sales of less than 1,250. So if they sell less than 1,250 units, they will have a loss. Sales greater than 1,250 units, they'll have a gain. That's actually very well written. So this is the important number, break even. Okay? And so given this company's cost structure and variable cost per unit, sales price, they have to sell 1,250 units to break even. Beyond that, they make money. Okay, and keep in mind, I don't have a dollar sign here because this is units right there. And I tried to put this out. There it is right there, 1,250 units. Not dollars, it's units. Okay, now the next question you might want to ask is, okay, so I have to sell 1,250 units to break even. How many, given everything else, given the same circumstances, how many units do we have to sell? How many sales dollars does that represent in order to break even? And that's a very easy question to answer. You're just going to take the same number, your total fixed costs, and if you just divide that by your contribution margin ratio, which is 40%, that will give you the answer. So if we divide 25,000 divided by 40%, that gives you $62,500. So that corresponds with the 1,250 units here. What we're saying is that you have to sell 1,250 units to break even, and that represents 62,500 in sales. And if you look at my description all the way over here, all it means is that these are the sales the company must achieve to break even. Those are sales dollars, and they equal to, and it's not a coincidence, that they will equal your 1,250 units times your $50 sales price per unit, which is, by the way, right there. So this is so far what you've come to. The conclusion you come to is, in order to break even, we have to sell 1,250 units, and that represents, at $50 per unit, that represents $62,500. Obviously, you could just take 1,250 times $50 too, but that's it. Okay. Now we're going to calculate, and I'm going to change this here. This is, I'm going to say, target net income. Target net income of $30,000 in dollars. Okay, so now let's say we're not going to settle break even. We want to make some money. We want to make $30,000. Okay, and so we're assuming that everything stays the same. We're assuming that total fixed cost stays the same. We're basically assuming that all this data up here just stays the same. So all you've got to do, if you want to target net income, what you're saying, first of all, we're assuming everything stays the same. So each unit is going to contribute $20 toward, first of all, meeting your fixed costs, and after that, toward working toward satisfying your target net income, your targeted net income, okay, your desired net income. So we're going to use the same equation as in the first line here as the breaking point unit. So all we've got to do is take this equation here and add our target net income. Now, I'm just assuming the 30,000 is an assumption. There's $30,000 here. Target net income is 30,000. That's just an assumption. You can target any income you want. You can want to target $40,000, $50,000, whatever. Okay, but notice that all I've got to do is, now I'm saying I not only have to cover my total fixed costs, but I've got to sell enough units at $20 per unit contribution margin, which is right there, in order to achieve my target net income. So I've just taken the same formula, and to the numerator, I have added target net income. So that's, you've got to cover target total fixed costs and your target net income at a contribution margin per unit of $20. Okay, so we're going to take here, we're going to take our total fixed costs of, let's make that negative because it's a negative number. We're going to take our total fixed costs of 25,000, and then we're going to add to that our target net income of 30,000, which is, you see, now we've got to cover, instead of just covering 25, we've got to cover 25 plus 30, our target, which is our target net income. And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide by the same contribution margin per unit as up here, $20. So $20 up to the break-even point of $12.50, you have income of zero. Once you sell more, once you sell 1,251 units, you start making a profit. So just conceptually, if you sell 1,250 units, that gets you to the break-even point, which is net income of zero. Once you sell 1,251 units, that one unit will give you $20 gross profit. Profit, exactly, which is your contribution margin. 2 units, $40, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see what we get here. 50,000 divided by 20. Okay, so you've got to sell 2,750 units in order to achieve a target net income of 30,000. That's what I put over here. It's the company must sell 2,750 units to reach a target net income of 30,000. This also equals the 1,500 units. This equals 1,500 units, which is, by the way, let me put this here. bold. Okay, so that also equals the 1,500 units past the break-even point, which will give you that net income. So up to the break-even point, which is 1,250, it's right there, 1,250, you break even. You want $30,000 of income, then you've got to sell an extra 1,500 units at $20 per unit contribution margin to have that extra income. Okay, and now finally, I'm going to change this equation a little bit here. You can also calculate your, the number of sales that you need in order to achieve a certain that same target net income. Now, obviously, you could just take 2,750 units times your sales price of $50, and you'll get the same answer I'm about to get, and that's what I say out here. But it's nice to know the formula because sometimes it's a nice perspective to have in some problems. Okay, so we're going to take the same number, which is total fixed income. You've got to cover total fixed income plus 30, which is $25,000, and then you've got to earn $30,000. Okay, now I'm just going to divide by my contribution margin ratio, and your contribution margin ratio right here is 40%. Okay, so that means that take 55,000 divided by 40%, 137,500. Now all that is, I'll go over here, that this equals the 2,750 units it said you need to make in order to both break even and then meet a target net income. And I just multiply it times $50. This is another way to get it, but it's nice to have this formula. The contribution margin ratio is a nice concept. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and make that bold as we go into the next video. Okay, so anyway, those are the basic concepts in this chapter. And notice what I've made bold. I've made bold this part over here. And all we're saying is that you need 2,750 units to break even and earn a target net income of $30,000. And then what you need to do is, if you just multiply them by the sales price, you're going to get 137,500. Another way to get it is just take the sum of your total fixed cost plus your target net income, divide by your 40% contribution margin ratio. All the numbers are obtained from up there. Okay, so I will now stop, and then I'm going to go into the graph video, which is kind of fun actually. And we can do one or two basic. You'll see the graph that I made down here. I'm going to make it here. Hope it works. So you'll see the graph, and it's not a bad graph. Okay, and you can actually, once you make the graph, you can start seeing how this works, and you'll see that I already put up certain parameters there. Okay, so anyway, so let's, I'm going to sign off here, and hopefully, I'm trying to buy a microphone because I noticed that I come in and out of these things. So I'm going to try to buy a microphone this week so you have better audio with me. Anyway, I think this should give you some at least start you on the basic concepts of the chapter. Thank you very much, and I'll upload this video, and we will put the next one up very soon. Thank you very much.